Hi there Acer fans, and in this video I'll be looking at watering as a general principle, but also how different this year is compared to last year. So this is a shot of the same time of my trees last year, and you can see that they've leafed out pretty much, completely different to this year. And what caused this was very mild weather here in the UK, and no doubt most of Europe and parts of North America as well, I guess. But what's happened is that the trees leafed out very early, whereas this year's a totally different story. Hi there maple fans, and in this series of videos I'll be sharing what I do throughout an entire year on a monthly basis. Please note that these months are based on UK timings, but of course can easily be adapted to anywhere else in the world. So growing acers in pots opens them to an awful lot of people that would otherwise not have the space to grow them in the ground. In the ground, these will grow into very tall trees over a long time because they're not that fast growing, many of them, but they'll get very big indeed. Whereas in pots, the advantage is they're kept small. It's kind of almost like a bonsai effect to some degree. But most of the liquid that they receive is not going to come from the rain. It's going to come from you, particularly in the drier spells. So yes, there we've already had a look at feeding plants in a previous video. We've inspected the roots just to understand where we are with them for this year as well. And on top of that, we've sort of thought about perhaps repotting or not. But then we move on to the very, very important subject of when to commence watering, and that time in the UK is absolutely now. And just to say, if you'd like to come with me on my Acer journey, please do like and subscribe to my little channel. It really, really helps. I've also recently set up a Patreon site, so that's a great way of supporting me too, and help out with some of the costs of my excursions really. There's also the offer of some personal help, if you'd like it, either in a group format or on a one-to-one basis. So to understand hydration in Japanese maples, it's really important to understand all the factors that maybe could affect it. So for example, if this tree has leafed out, then the transpiration through those leaves will increase the uptake of water to the roots massively. There's the size of the pot, so how much compost is inside it relative to the size of the tree. How much wind is it in? Does it face north, south, east or west? How much shade is there? How hot is the ambient temperature? So quite frankly, the list goes on and on and on. So I think the major mistake that people make is to treat every tree the same. So you see that one there, the water meter's right in the middle, it's fine. Exactly why there's so many variables to understand, it's too difficult. But if we actually take a measurement with one of these little water meters, which are really cheap and affordable, it gives us an absolutely clear idea. It's not guesswork. And the key learning here is I treat each tree differently. Sure, if you're going on holiday once in a while, you can drench all of them if you really needed to. But I just think it's so much better to treat them on an individual basis. So Shayna there, much, much lower. That needs watering. And just an absolutely key point, if the water meter is slightly to the left, if it's a little bit dry but not completely dry, that's an ideal time to water your Japanese maples. Why is this? Well, because if you keep watering them every single day with a sort of cupful of water, that's not going to encourage root growth. The roots grow in these trees to kind of find more water, and if there's ample supply just around the root ball that's there, it's not going to be so vigorous in doing that. So what we have here is this little princess about 10 days before the second bit of film I'm just going to show you. So there it is, just starting to leaf out. Then about 10 days later it's advanced quite considerably. And if you check the water meter now, I'm going to tell myself off for this one because that actually is really, really dry. So when I fed it about 10 days previously, I did give them all a drink, and that was very fortunate because it's surprising, you know, what can happen. Again, you've got a tree here that's leafed out, and I would say that again is why we have all these leaves on it. It's drawing water through the roots and it's quite dry again. So that needs watering most definitely. Having a look at this Shishigashira, totally different story. So just to reiterate, I wouldn't be watering that just yet. I'd like it to get a little bit drier, and then I can water from a watering can and do that. Another one there, Twisted Spider, lovely little tree. That's about perfect. I think if it's just hitting that sort of dry side, then that's absolutely fine. Please note with these little water meters as well, it's really easy to penetrate the soil with them. You can go a bit deeper or shallower. You can take a measurement closer or further away from the sort of centre of the tree to see what's going on. And also by looking at that, which is one of the wettest trees I've come across, I know, and if you've watched my previous video, you'd understand that's over potted slightly. So the compost is retaining a lot more water than the tree's needing. So I definitely want to slow down on the watering process there. So just moving on to a very important point, the tree in front of us here, lovely little fellow, is still in its original pot, fine, because the roots didn't warrant it being repotted. As you can see again, that's gone really dry, so naughty me. But the reason is that potting mixture is incredibly free-flowing. So when nurseries pot these up, or good nurseries, this is what they should do, then they use a mixture so they can just water everything and water will pour through it like that. So that makes quite a big difference to how long it's going to retain that water. So again, if you've got them in their original pots, that's the right thing to do. But in my own sort of compost medium I use, it will retain water rather better. So what we have here is an example of the same tree from last year. Lovely little fellow, Hiro Toro Nishiki, I think I pronounced that right. And there we can see that it's reasonably advanced. So there we can see the video I took about 10 days ago, a bit like the other Acer. One of the first to leaf out actually, which is fairly consistent. But on the other hand, it's only just in the process of leafing out and is not very advanced at all. But again, at that point, water levels will be fine. It's not going to draw anything like as much moisture out the compost at that stage. So here we have a shot taken a couple of days ago, and water retention is much more in that glazed pot. So depending on your choice of pot, that can be a massive factor too, and just brings me again to the point of, use the water meter, test them individually to get that experience. I mean, from experience, I'd know not to water this so much, but I got that because of that water meter, and that's what it showed me. Whether you use ceramic glazed pots or unglazed, I generally prefer unglazed because in the summer they keep the plants cool. Water actually penetrates through them because the pots are porous, so they have a slightly cooling effect, but you would have to water more often. So it's a balancing act. If you have a very hot climate, perhaps a glazed pot would make a lot more sense. And you probably will get away with sort of a slightly bigger pot. On the other hand, in the climate here in the UK, I really would prefer to do it in that kind of way. So some shots here of the trees from last year, just to prove the point. Every year is different. Not watering last year was a great idea. Watering consistently this year is absolutely the way to go. Just back to Ryusen here as well. It hardly leafed out at all actually, and that's fine by the way. If some of your trees are leafed out and some haven't, but they've still got buds, don't worry about it. It's a different cultivar, a different position. There's so many factors. But the key message from me is if you're going to water, because it's slightly dry, this is what you need to do. Absolutely flood fill it with water. And it's very pleasing actually to see all those bubbles rise to the surface. I have mentioned this in previous videos, but that means the water's penetrating into all the air gaps in the compost. That's great. If the compost was insanely dry, then it won't do that. So you'd have to go back 5 minutes later and re-water. So what I've done there is I've actually watered so much, I've drained off all my water butts. There's 400 litres. That caters for about 73 trees. So what I'm now going to do, and I'll give them a rinse out with some water and then refill them all with tap water and leave it a good 48 hours for all the chlorine to dissipate. That means I've got a reserve of water because we're in for a dry spell in the UK, which is unusual but very nice. But it also does mean that any bugs and sort of flies and bits and pieces that are in there, the chlorine will kill them off. And I just think that's a nice spring clean thing to do to those water butts really. So this is what's coming. I'll no doubt be visiting some gardens this year. I always do. I just love to go out and see Acers out and about. I actually have permission to get some drone footage as well. So that'll be nice during the summer. I've got a small drone that I can use to sort of show Japanese maples from a slightly different perspective, I suppose. And also not forgetting, we'll be talking about what Acers to buy, what cultivars to buy, and indeed where to buy them from. I totally appreciate many people don't live in the UK, but there are definitely sort of different places like garden centres. You could buy them from specialist nurseries. What about mail order, that sort of thing? So we'll have a conversation about that as well, because honestly it can make a real difference. And given these trees could outlive us all actually, I think making the right selection of cultivar that's going to suit your garden, suit your lifestyle, is really, really important. There's a huge variety of these trees to choose from. Your local garden centre might stock half a dozen or something like that. As you can see from this place I love in Poole in Dorset in the UK, I think they stock about 100 varieties, and some do even more than that. So careful selection is really the order of the day, to be honest.